All righty. Well, thank you all for attending today's webinar on the development of peer recovery centers for future sustainability. Before we begin, I want to let you know a couple housekeeping things here, and I have a couple slides here we'll go through. I wanted to advise you that the webinar will be recorded, so if this is something that that you are opposed to, please send me Amy Pinkney a private chat on the chat box, which is on the bottom right of your screen, and we'll make sure that we'll mute your line so anything that's said will not be recorded. We will also post the recording and the webinar in its entirety on the Ideas Exchange web portal, which many of you have gotten training on. And in the future, we actually will be doing another large training to get people reacquainted with the Ideas Exchange. And the PowerPoint presentation will also be available on the Ideas Exchange. And we will email you once all that material has been posted. And I have right here, you see here the Ideas Exchange network URL. And all those that were permissioned were given a username and login. If perhaps it's been a while and you've forgotten that, which I can understand, don't hesitate to either call me or send me an email, and we'll get you back up online. Your audio portions are muted right now. You will see that by the X next to your name, and that's to help us limit noise and feedback during the presentation. As you know, this is the first time we're using WebEx. In the past, we've used the SAMHSA system, and that's a little bit different, and we were able to do some things that we're not able to do on WebEx. So we appreciate you bearing with us here. We will be taking questions at the end of all presentations. And at the end of the, excuse me, and at the end, if you have any questions and you want to ask any of the presenters, you can send via your chat to Amy Pinkney, which is also listed as host, the question. But we ask that you identify who is sending it and to whom the question is to be addressed. Then at that point, I will go ahead and announce the question. We'll unmute your line, and you'll be able to talk with the speakers directly. Okay. All righty. Now we'll have Linda will do an introduction and introduce you to your wonderful speakers today. And let me make sure that we have here, Linda, that you are unmuted, which you are. And please take it from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy, and thanks to all the JBS staff for working so hard on putting this together and making it work. And a good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. To everybody, we're delighted to be able to provide this, what I think is a very important webinar, and we really want to talk about the whole issue of sort of peer recovery centers and the role they can play in recovery and the roles that they can play in our communities. And peer recovery centers serve as an important institution to help individuals take control of their lives. They're anchored in the heart of the community. They serve to put a face on recovery, to build recovery capital, and community members and their families impacted by addiction. I think there's a little interference. Having peer-based centers that are also based in the community, more than just a mindset, but they really go beyond just a peer component within a program. Peer recovery centers mean having a system to ensure that the voices of those with lived experience of addiction recovery are heard and respected. Most importantly, it ensures that people in recovery are involved at all levels of decision-making about the program, its policies, and strategies. And you can have peer recovery centers, both RCOs are generally standalone, but there are sometimes affiliated with an ongoing larger entity or organization, so that there are different ways to structure this, but generally they are what we would call peer-run and peer-driven recovery community organizations. So today I'm really pleased to have some of your colleagues, two of the RCSP grantees who are working or either have already instituted or are working to make recovery centers a reality. We have Katherine Shriver from Frederick County, who is at the beginning of the process, and Jim Gillen from the Providence Center, where they've established a RCO and are really beginning to take this to a whole nother level. So first I'll introduce Katherine. She'll speak first, and then Jim will speak. And Katherine Shriver is currently the ROSC Project Director for Frederick County, Maryland. Prior to assuming this position on July 1st, 2011, Katherine was the coordinator of substance abuse services in Frederick, Maryland, as the director of the Division of Substance Abuse Services for the Frederick County Health Department, which she had been in that position since May 1997. Before returning to her home state of Maryland, Katherine worked for Wabash Valley Hospital in West Lafayette, Indiana, as the director of the Inpatient Addiction Treatment Program for 6 years. She began working in substance abuse as an outpatient addiction counselor in 1981 at Fairbanks Hospital in Indianapolis, Indiana. In addition to this experience, Katherine has also served as a church pastor and minister of religious education and youth. And then let me just also introduce Jim. They'll both, he'll follow Katherine. Jim Gillen is and has been an active recovery leader in New England for more than 10 years. The face of recovery in Rhode Island, Jim has developed a wide-ranging recovery education campaign that has reached thousands of Rhode Islanders, from policymakers and academics to homeless people and prisoners. Jim was able to dramatically expand his reach when he began working for the Providence Center in 2008, where he created the Recovery Services Division and serves as the director of the Anchor Recovery Community Center. Under Jim's leadership, the Anchor saw 49,000, you heard me correctly, 49,000 visitors in its first year, and continues to grow, averaging 60,000 visitors per month. I want to just have you join me in welcoming our two wonderful speakers. And Katherine, I'm going to turn it over to you now. So take it away. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, and welcome everybody from Frederick County, Maryland. Pleased to be here. And you'll see that, it's not, okay, there we go. It wasn't clicking too well. Last week, as we were putting our PowerPoint together, we just happened to be having a meeting of our steering committee. Not everybody was here, but I said, hey, let me take your picture, and I'll include it in the program. And so this is part of our steering committee, and you might notice the person with the white hair is the one speaking to you. And also, as I came out of the meeting, there were a couple of volunteers in the office working, and so we took their picture so you can see who we are in Frederick County. The first couple slides I have up for you are familiar slides to you, I'm sure. They are the ROSC principles, and the next slide is the ROSC elements of recovery. And I present them to you because I just think they're key and fundamental to this whole process. People ask, what is ROSC? And they're anxious to hear about a model, or I think sometimes a little disappointed when we say it's really not a model. ROSC will look different depending upon where you are in the country, but essentially it is a system that utilizes these essential principles and elements of recovery. And I'm not going to go through them because I know you know them, and SAMHSA publishes them for us. But just looking at a few in terms of the principles, I mean, it's key that ROSC, recovery through ROSC is self-directed and empowering. It's holistic. It must involve peers and allies. And looking at some key ROSC elements, person-centered. And as you go down, it's anchored in the community. You go down a little further, it says it must involve peer recovery support services. And below that, we must hear the voices of recovering individuals and families. And unfortunately, just reading these principles and elements, we don't always remember them or integrate them, but we have to keep going over them, I think, until they really become second nature, till we really know and understand them to the fullest, because this is what we need to really continue to base our planning and all of our decision-making upon. And so that's why I continue to bring these elements and principles back to the persons in supervision, whether they're the volunteers or whether they're actually our steering committee or substance abuse council. These are just key ingredients. So I present them to you first. And here in Frederick County, for us to begin to engage and operationalize these principles and elements, we began with some self-assessment. Not always easy to do, but this was critical. And as Linda mentioned, at the time I was the director of our services, and we have a full continuum of services, and we had good outcomes and great reputation. We were doing well. But if we were honest, I realized that really we weren't doing as well as we could in terms of dealing with, assuming the ownership of our clients. Too often we were practicing handing them off, down to another level of care or to another agency. And we did collaboration. There were collaboration efforts always, but not on the level that it needed to be, and especially as people became busier and busier and more concerned about funding. Listening to the language often was not using ROSC language. Too often was hearing the terminology of, talking about our clients as non-compliant, resistant, manipulative, in denial. And we also, to be honest, we weren't always as empowering with our clients as we could be. And perhaps looking at that on the simplest scale would be in the whole process of developing treatment plans. We know it's a collaborative effort between the client and the counselor, but, at the end, I'm afraid too often perhaps it was more the possession of the counselor than it actually was the client. And we were not addressing and making an impact upon the larger issue of discrimination and stigma. And then when it came to client involvement, we had satisfaction surveys, and we had NITEX training and these types of things. But the honest part is that it really wasn't the priority for us that it needed to be as we functioned. And I'm sorry, I missed that whole PowerPoint for you right there. This is on the PowerPoint, and you'll have that available to you. But besides looking at our self-assessment, then we had the issue of the decreased funding. And we know what's happening in the economy around the nation, but here in Maryland, what is happening is that we're moving from, we're a government agency, and we have been receiving block grant dollars forever and ever and providing services. But that's ending, so that more and more of the block grant money is being given to going back for Medicaid match. And so that we as an organization are moving towards fee-for-services, which is a huge change for us. So looking at our assessment and the issue of funding, we realized that ROSC does provide answers for us. It could, in fact, help us to improve and allow us to be able to continue to provide services. And the key ingredients, I just mentioned 3 ingredients, I think, that are key in terms of answers for us, is the fact of peers and volunteers. That's huge, as well as distinguishing treatment and recovery services. The focus has been treatment, and more as we focus upon recovery services benefiting the client. And finally, then, recovery centers. So for us to begin, in Frederick County, to begin to really implement and move ahead with ROSC, realized very quickly that that's not something that one agency does alone, because if we're really going to integrate services, and if we're really going to provide our clients with choices and empower them to choose what services they wanted to access, that we really had to bring the community together. So we brought together many partners, and if you look down that list, we have a number of mental health and substance abuse treatment providers, as well as Gale Houses, which is a halfway house. We have Goodwill Industries and the Workforce Development, which address the employment issue of employment. Project Alive is housing. And then we have faith-based organizations, the Religious Coalition and Water Boys for Jesus, as well as then the University of Maryland Cooperative Extension. They have many, many classes and offer much in terms of recovery services for people. And so we brought them together and we began saying, okay, we have to develop RUSC in Frederick, Maryland. And we may have to do this without money. If there's money available, we'll look for it. But always the message was, we may have to do this without money. But, of course, we were very thrilled when we applied for the grant and received the grant. That gave us some money to begin with. So our journey in Frederick, year one, I don't know about for you, but, that just swished by. I don't really know where that year went to. But we began, when we found out we had the grant, we began hiring staff, and that's not always easy to do quickly when you work for the government. Creating forms, establishing procedures. We began recruiting peer mentors. We had some idea of how to use them, but not a lot of knowledge. And then, of course, we had to begin doing intakes for our participants. And remember the deadline date of the end of January. And we had to begin spending money. We had excess money that year, and we needed to get our participants into services so we could spend this money for them and get it into the community. And it didn't take us very long into that first year to realize that, wow, we needed some more staff. This was quite a project. So by year two, we were fortunate we were able to hire an additional staff person. And we needed to do this also to just take the program to a different level. We needed we realized we needed some better training for our peer mentors. Now you see us talking about recovery coach training. So we went to CCAR. And we went through the Recovery Coach Academy and also the training of the trainers so that then this past February we were able to come back and actually have our first academy to do some training of persons in Frederick County. Realizing also we had participants in our RUSC and, a number of them, but wondering then how to bring them together. They were out, accessing services in the community, recovery services, but they were kind of doing some of that even before the RUSC. So we needed to bring them together so that we could form a community and really provide them with the level of support that they need to enhance their recovery efforts. So recovery centers. We need recovery centers. Also began dealing with the telephone recovery support. I don't know if many of you were at the training. I believe it was last fall that SAMHSA provided, and I heard some statistics that got my attention about how effective telephone support, recovery support is for persons in their recovery of effort. And so we have been moving in that direction because we want to provide that, as well as volunteers, which is huge. Obviously, they need to be involved, and we need a lot of bodies to make all of this happen. So, year two. Now, why recovery centers? Perhaps the biggest reason is because it provides a community of recovery, and that's huge. As I said, we realize there's people out there, but how can we really provide them the level of support they need? So we provide these activities and presence in the center for them in terms of support, as well as peer and RUSC participant interaction. Having recovery coaches on site is huge, as well as their interaction as groups. We provide substance-free activities, as well as recognitions. We began early on. We had a little celebration with cake and so forth, recognizing people with their length of time in recovery, and we've continued to build from that. This summer, we're going to be having a picnic for our volunteers, recognizing them. We found some funding other than our SAMHSA grant to have this picnic, and it provides a place to provide recognition of little or small successes, recognition on any level. Another reason for recovery centers is, and this is huge, it's volunteer opportunities. As we began to talk about and plan our center, then we immediately involved the consumers and volunteers. It formed a planning committee or a vision team, and it was amazing to watch their investment and the ownership that they were able to come up with immediately. And they were talking about the peer-led discussion groups and came up with the list of topics that they would want to have involved, but invested in the planning from the beginning. and an opportunity of giving back. One thing I've realized in learning more and more and seeing demonstrated how volunteering and giving back is a huge ingredient to recovery. And we've had one of our volunteers speak and say several times, I've tried recovery several times, and the difference this time is that I'm giving back. And so we've learned as we visited the NET, a program in Philadelphia, that the sooner people get into that recovery process and the sooner they begin volunteering and giving back, the better. And we've realized that as we offer more and more groups and activities through our center, then there will be more and more opportunities for them to grow and to actually have training experiences that will just help them develop. Continuing, why recovery centers? Well, this is the place for recovery centers, for recovery activities to be offered. And this is just a list of things that we have come up with and tried. But we have our peer-led discussion groups. We have recovery plan groups where they actually work on developing their recovery plans. We're forming a self-care program with many ingredients of exercise, motivation, relaxation, these kinds of things, with incentives to keep people motivated. Family group, financial group, grief group. And in terms of social functions, tomorrow night, for the first time, we're going to have line dancing, movie night, game night, jewelry making. Someone brought in beads and string and so forth and was leading a group, showing a group, and they got together and were making some jewelry. And you can look down this list and see that all of these items, it's minimal or no cost, but yet very key recovery services. And also be aware that the recovery community is part of planning these activities. We've distributed surveys and asked them what they want, as well as we have a working committee who is actually working on the different topics of the group and what groups and what social activities and so forth. These things are being worked on by, I think we have about a total of 6 different committees that are functioning. So then another reason, and the last reason why we're saying why recovery centers, because the recovery centers really allow us to tackle these larger issues of discrimination and stigma. As people come to the recovery center, they can experience firsthand lack of stigma and hopefully empowerment and positive reinforcement. And it also brings the community together to work to produce efforts that address these larger issues. And, they want to present a different face of recovery. And we know that we've already seen back in our list of recovery elements that rebuilding life in the community is key. And they do that as individuals, and they do that as a group. And we've had many efforts of giving back to the community. Several of the participants have gotten together as a group and have served meals at the rescue mission. And recently there was a local agency a nonprofit that was having a fundraiser, a walk-run, and a group of our participants manned one of the water stations. And they have numerous of these activities planned. In July, here in Frederick, downtown, the July 4th celebration is huge, and so they're already planning to have a booth where they can offer activities without drinking to persons seeking recovery. Huge. Obstacles. We have had obstacles in terms of developing a recovery center. And please realize, as Linda pointed out, we're in the beginning stage. All of this isn't just together and nicely happening. These are things that we're working on. But we don't have any designated space. And I might add, we don't have any money. But what we have done, we've gone and talked to different groups and found where we could, places that would let us come in and use their space for certain hours on certain days during the week. For instance, we began, and we wanted to begin small, but we began at a local community center where it's close to where a lot of our participants live, and it's on the bus line. But we've been in there a couple of evenings a week providing activities. And forming this, getting these recovery centers takes a huge amount of energy and time. And we can say, well, we're utilizing volunteers, but recruiting, training, and organizing volunteers is a huge effort in itself. And we found we're limited staff, but yet with the Recovery Center, then we have evening hours, which is even more demanding on our time. Things learning, and realize that that is in the present tense. We've learned, one thing we're learning is that what hours to be open, because we've been in evening, but we realized late in the evening people were too tired to actually access some of the things that we're providing. So we're looking now to provide more daytime. How to organize and utilize your volunteers. We began, forming a consumer coalition, a consumer council, and we then had an election of officers. And it didn't take long to realize that, certain people, when they have power, that can become problematic. And that wasn't working out. So we changed our focus, and we moved from, as I've already mentioned, we have about 6 committees formed that are working. And so we decided we would form a committee with all of these chair people of the different committees and have them come together. But we're learning this by trial and error. The need to have recovery coaches available after groups. People come out of groups, some of our discussion groups, and they needed to talk further, so we wanted to make sure that they were there, right there, available on that time. We've learned the importance of communicate, and I think that probably speaks for itself. And the need to anticipate, be flexible, and address issues quickly. What do you do if someone comes in intoxicated? How do we handle? And we need to handle quickly any inappropriate behavior or conflictual situations. Issues of attendance. Something else we're addressing. We want more participants. And we realized that, we're actually doing our intakes and providing things like bus passes and so forth here at the health department. And then the recovery center is somewhere else. So one thing that we're wanting to do is find some place where we can be more during the daytime and provide, have them come and do the intakes and get their bus passes and so forth right on site so that they can say, oh, yes, this is where we come back to for this group. You have to remain fluid, and you've got to learn by trial and error. Utilize the NITEX and try things, and if it's not working, change it quickly. And seek consultation on any level. For us, I mentioned early on how we needed more sophisticated training for our peer mentors, and so we sought out CCAR, and we need more sophisticated. I mean, this is huge, working with volunteers, so we're consulting with PROACT in Pennsylvania about organizing and providing training for our volunteers. And finally, our sustainability. And I've already mentioned to you a little bit about Frederick and how we're going fee-for-service, and it's going to be important for us to sustain is to form a 501c3 where we can fundraise and we can then maybe compete for the government fees that are going to be going out to fee-for-service. But our final statement is this. We believe that, and we really believe, our sustainability depends upon our recovery center because, and we, of course, will have more centers, but we believe this provides the place and the environment for the recovery community of peers to operationalize the principles and elements of ROSC and to achieve the goals of individuals and families living recovery and changing societal views and stigmas. Thank you. That's what we have to say from Frederick County. Thanks so much.
Katherine, thank you so much. That was extremely informative, and by looking at this, I think everybody can see how hard you all have worked these past 2 years. That's quite an accomplishment. I am now going to toss the presentation over to Jim, and Jim, accept it on your end, and I will bring up your PowerPoint slides right here. Just one moment. One moment, sorry for the technical difficulty.
Well, all right. Greetings from beautiful, partially sunny Rhode Island. My name is Jim Gillen, and I'm the Associate Director of Recovery Services for the Providence Center. My main baby, as you might say, is the Anchor Recovery Community Center. We're the first recovery community center in the state of Rhode Island, and it's been a long and sometimes very trying process to get here. So what is a recovery community center? The key word for us is community. What we try to do is we create a safe, healthy, welcoming atmosphere. Very important thing is that we welcome and honor everyone, regardless of their path to recovery. And that's really key. We have a big old sign when you walk in the door which states that. So our goal is to encourage participation in the recovery network. So your little network, your larger network, your family, whatever that looks like, and the community at large. It's very important for folks to do because we see a lot of people that come in through treatment or through incarceration or whatever reason, and they find themselves trapped in a little box where sometimes they're afraid to venture outside of that box, and they run into the same barriers. So we really encourage participation with the community at large, and we establish a framework to do so. You know, whether it's somebody that's been around for 30 years or we get folks around for 30 minutes, and we try to work with everyone and, you know, what can we do to make your recovery better? You know, you're the driver, and we're just there to enhance your experience. So a Recovery Community Center offers a combination and variety of recovery support services, including my favorite, which is the All Recovery format. It's a non-12-step, all-topic support group, and it's open to anyone. People in recovery, friends, families, allies, pretty much no topic is off limits. So you're in the Recovery Community Center, Anchor, and Katherine, thanks. When you said it's anchored in the heart of the community, we sure are. And we happen to be called Anchor, which is even better. So what goes on here? So we have a large population of 12-step groups, including AA, NA, CA, Al-Anon. We have LGBT groups, Latino veterans, etc. These include beginners, step groups, AWOL groups, traditions, anniversaries, and on and on and on. Big important thing right underneath the sign where we welcome and honor all paths to recovery is that the Anchor Recovery Community Center is not affiliated with any 12-step group. And that's for the protection of the 12-step group and also for the fidelity of Anchor. There are at least 2 all-recovery meetings daily, including gender-specific meetings. Several other days we have different formats of all-recovery meetings. One is called a mindful recovery. And a very interesting thing with that is one of the local crisis stabilization units for co-occurring disorders brings their group there every single Tuesday for a mindful all-recovery group, which, I mean, to me is unbelievable, you know, because it's usually this population, you know, we have to keep them in and they're in this acute stage, but they're bringing them out and like, you know what, here's your community and become part of it. It's safe and it's welcoming. Recovery coaching, recovery coach trainings, recovery coach support, both in person and through, as Katherine said, the telephone recovery support program are available. Telephone recovery support is allowing us to reach a lot of populations that we haven't had a lot of success with in the past. Among them, elders, you know, and there's a lot of prescription drug and alcohol abuse in Rhode Island among a very underserviced population, and that's the elders. And we're developing now. We're already doing it, but it looks like we're going to take the next step and really go full scale working with elders. Just right where we're located in downtown Pawtucket, there's quite a few elderly high-rises too, and we've made some contact with them. We've met a few times, and we're going to get a full-scale program. Really key element, and thank you, Rosk, is a full-time employment specialist. He's stationed at Anchor. It's his home office. He also does stuff at our other locations. But it's one of those things. It's amazing, not just the Ross clients, but how many people just walk in off the street to check his constantly updated employment opportunity books. Of course, he helps with resumes and all things. He's very creative because a lot of people, and all of our Ross clients, you know, they have some negative legal history and holes in their work history. So he's very good in an ethical way to help people to be creative on their resume. So we have a lot of regular fun activities and events daily, and of course that's another thing where recovery needs to be fun. It needs to be not drudgery. Thing that came out, we have children's groups. They're mostly on Saturday and during when school is closed. Part of it was it seemed like every kid that came to ANCA wound up in my office, so we needed to find something for them to do. A barrier, especially for moms, is going to, whether it's a 12-step or other recovery support group, with the children. Children are not always welcome at groups. So what happens is, through one of our interns, they developed an idea to have a kiddie support group. And sometimes that's just very light topics, or depending on the age and the level of the kids, it may just be playtime. So it was one of those aha moments that just kind of happened, and it's become a big part of what ANCA does. Another recovery community center function is health and wellness focused. And that speaks for itself. I mean, we encourage people. We have a lot of community walks. We're in the historic district of Pawtucket. It's an old, one of Rhode Island's oldest cities. So, we organize walking tours. We're having a basketball tournament in 2 weeks with the local YMCA around the corner. So, we try to really, and again, that's helping people get outside that box that they can so often get trapped in. We have community advocacy and provider group meetings. One of the things is our state recovery community organization, which is called Right Cares, is just moving their whole office there. So what that helps, it helps people with civil engagement. We're tracking bills at the State House. We're finding a whole segment of the population that they really, really enjoy doing that, and it gives them a chance to be part of something. Oh, I can register to vote? Not only that, but you can make a difference, and they're seeing the power of having your lawmaker know that you're a constituent instead of just the person that doesn't vote. And so, and referral sources is available. We have a constantly updated resource book, and we pride ourselves at ANCA that we've become a bit of a clearinghouse, recovery housing, and how to access what. As I'm sitting here. Over at ANCA, we've got one of the big local SSI providers is coming in, and they're going to start doing a free weekly clinic there for people to find out if you're eligible for SSI, and it's also to get people connected, in a recovery situation. So they're training our recovery coaches what questions to ask and how to determine somebody's eligibility. So that's very cool. What goes on there? We have a great computer room. We have 5 computers. And the room's utilized by people job searching, building resumes, creating and getting email, Facebook, just on and on. It's kind of like a very cool library, we might say. Another thing that we have is One Recovery. One Recovery is a service. It's an invite-only Facebook style where people can receive invites. It's a secure, supportive recovery website. The site offers recovery chat opportunities, online meetings. It's helping people build an e-support network. If you list certain emotions called emoticons, it can send out an email blast to your whole network to check in with you. And that's very cool because, again, what we're finding is a large portion of people that are interested not only in the One Recovery but also in telephone recovery support are primarily methadone patients too, because it's a very often stigmatized population. So they're finding this whole thing, and what we're doing is we're in the process of putting some of our all recovery meetings on a live chat on One Recovery. And anybody that has kids, that I can call my kids are grown, but I can call them, and it may take them 2 days to get back to me. But boy, if I text them or send them something on Facebook, bada bing, I hear from them right away. So social events, we pride ourselves, and we become really well known for our social events. Big thing is holidays. They can be a challenge for the recovering person. Alcohol on board or, drug situations, a lot of negative memories, a number of people that have burned bridges with their family. So what we found is that having family-friendly events helps to build new recovery memories. Recovery is a family celebration. And that's the thing. So we're not looking at it as a preventive, you'll be safe here. Yes, that's a given. But we want you to be here. We want you to be able to celebrate a holiday like Joe Public, only in a much safer and supportive way. And it's always recovery coaches on duty during holidays or any special event that we have if people get overwhelmed. So some of the things that we do, New Year's Eve, we had a live music. We had a great all-recovery meeting that went on for over 2 hours. And then we did the countdown. We sat there and we watched the ball drop. Amazingly is that, and this I wish I could say I planned it, but amazingly it developed. There were a large group of people came before they went out. A number of people came and just stayed all night. And then there was a whole group of people that came in about 11:30, and they wanted to watch the ball drop in a recovery atmosphere. Big aha moment, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl came when we first opened. The Super Bowl, we had an event, and we always have a reptile show, which that's a whole nother webinar, but reptiles are very popular with the recovery families. So we have a reptile show, and a lot of families came in during the day, and then that evening, a whole nother group of people came in. Some stayed all day. But a lot of it, and we noticed there was a lot of dads bringing their kids, and maybe that was their weekend or that day, or they got permission for the first time to have their kids. And they came and they watched the game, just like a dad, and some moms too, but it was a majority of dads with their kid watching the game, like any other family. And that was one of those things like, wow, go figure. St. Patrick's Day, as we call it, Sober St. Patrick's Day. We had a haunted house. We turned the whole recovery center and the empty storefront next door into this huge haunted house. And tremendous amount of people. Thanksgiving, we had all donations, and we had a whole big Thanksgiving dinner for people, and we just stayed open all day. Of course, Santa Claus came. We had holiday events, Christmas. We stay open Christmas Eve late, all day Christmas Day. One of the 12-step groups asked if they could have a marathon meetings there, so we made that available to them. My favorite, I'm a New Yorker, I love block parties. We have a big cookout. We have one coming up the last Friday night in July if you find yourself in Rhode Island. We do it right out on the street, big thing. We get donations, and a lot of restaurants work with us, and we feed everybody that comes. Movie nights, open mics, poetry slams, as I said, sporting events, a karaoke night, and the wonderful reptile shows. So trainings, forums such as Designer Drugs, we just did a big presentation for probation and parole officers at their request. Educational opportunities, we had a few of the local junior colleges and the small colleges came in, and they were there and, showing people opportunities that you can go back to school. You can, again, get outside that box and really become part of mainstream society. Rebuilding your credit, which is anyone on this call knows is often a challenge when people have a long history of using. Sometimes the credit is not where you want it to be. We had an expungement clinic. We do those on a regular basis. Wellness activities, drum circles, yoga, meditation groups. We have a deal with a local yoga studio up the street. A woman happens to be the anchor of one of the local news programs, too, and she's a wonderful community partner. So we do yoga twice a week. It's right up the street. We meet at Anchor, and we all go up there. Advocacy through our collaboration, as I said, with the state's RCO, which is called RICARES, Rhode Island Communities for Addiction Recovery. Voter registration, legislative activities, civic engagement, community service. Big destination with probation, parole, public defenders, other groups. We do a lot of community service. So our origins. Anchor Recovery Community Center opened in December of 2010. We looked at least 40 locations, including an old movie theater. NIMBY, not in my backyard, was a major factor. And in a way, it was good because the movie theater was extremely run down, but I have to tell you, it was a really cool old-time movie lobby. But we had a lot of NIMBY and a lot of inappropriate locations. So the current location, downtown Pawtucket, Rhode Island's on Main Street, 249 Main Street if you keep in score. So we are literally on Main Street. Since opening, and this is as of May 1st, more than 82,000 visits. Not unique visits, and that's including the 12-step groups, but we're averaging close to 7,000 people a month now. Anchor helped to revitalize a street that needed life. There were a lot of empty storefronts. There was a busy street for traffic going through, but nobody was around there, and we've just brought the whole street to life. We're hosted by the Providence Center, as Linda mentioned up top. We have a wonderful arrangement with Rhode Island's largest community mental health and substance use disorder treatment facilities. So we have the power of this large organization behind us, but we're also an independent community center, and that's really important that it has that identity. We're also funded in part by a private donor. We get no state funding, although we'd welcome it. And the big thing is having those angels. It's a family member that we've gotten to know, connected through his son's long-term recovery, and he's on. He's also going to put up money for Anchor, too. So in September of 2010, we were awarded the Ross Grant. Focuses on incarcerated and formerly incarcerated males. But it's allowed us, as they see, the Ross Funding has greatly helped to launch Anchor and the wonderful things that it's done. It's allowed a full-time employment counselor, a center manager, part-time recovery support specialist who is also a volunteer coordinator, and a full-time liaison from the state's recovery community organization. So all this in addition to the clinical components that ROSC makes possible for us. Our recovery coaches, they have the opportunity to build non-clinical relationship with inmates prior to release. One of the things that we do is we are constantly training recovery coaches. Now we had our first Recovery Coach Academy back in February. So we have 26, newly minted coaches that we've been able to also work with. They're doing a lot in the prison. We're doing non-clinical work with the adult correctional institution, which even a year ago would never have happened. So we're so excited about that. We also do recovery rallies because we're the hub of the Rally for Recovery in Rhode Island every September, and we're doing recovery rallies in the prison. So Anchor creates a safe and healthy environment, focusing on them, the person driving their recovery. And, as preaching to the choir, we all know that a person has a much better chance to do well if they're the author of their own recovery. Sustainability, always a challenge. ROSC has given Anchor the time to become established and to flourish. We have quite a few other things in the hopper, and because of this positive, strong Anchor brand, we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to go on for a long time. Private funding, again, community partner with a personal interest. Continued support from the Providence Center. Many, if not most of the recovery community centers in other states receive some sort of state funding. Insurance companies, they've been romancing around Anchor a lot lately. We have a lot of interest, and we're working. It's a unique model, but we're working on recovery outcomes, as we all know. That's always been a challenge in the past. How do you get really clear recovery outcomes? So the impact on the community, we had some initial community resistance. Oh, it's another drug place. What are they doing there? It's a flop house. We chose to be a really public face and voice of recovery, as opposed to trying to fly under the radar and not ruffle any feathers. We're out there. We're out on the street, and we're very public, and we're very, very hands-on in our community. We're good neighbors, and that's an important part. We did it the old-fashioned way. In recovery, you talk about keeping your side of the street clean. We did that literally with brooms and shovels, and we started shoveling snow first, and then we started just cleaning first by us, and we started expanding. Before we knew it, we were cleaning all the way up and down Main Street. There's a big city fountain down the street and a municipal garage across it. We clean everything. So we took a negative and turned it into a positive outcome. Everybody knows us. And again, we're very, very hands-on. We don't have any loitering, smoking in designated spots. That is really, really important to a successful recovery center. And I learned that by visiting a lot of other recovery centers. Very important piece is Anchor has transformed or transcended many of the traditional barriers that are considered formal treatment in Rhode Island. When we first opened, we got a lot of us. You're going to open in Gateway Country, which is another large CMHC in Rhode Island. And we're like, well, we're a community center. We're not a treatment provider. And that's very key, and that has really become, the norm. Everybody knows Anchor. Did somebody say Anchor 2? On the hopper, we're hoping to be in place sometime in the late fall, in the middle of the state. And if you know Rhode Island, it takes you about a half hour to drive through it, but people don't like to travel. So we have one all the way down in the middle of the state. We've been actively searching for a location in the mid-state area, and we've looked at least 15 locations. We've also been approached by a local Y, and it's part of a whole network of YMCAs now called the Y. And we're working on an arrangement now. We're going to have anchor recovery at the Y. So that you talk about mainstream Middle America acceptance. And we're a recognizable brand, and I think that is really key. You know, everyone knows anchor recovery. So I'd like to just leave you with a feel-good story. ROSC has been a godsend in many ways, but I want to just give you a quick ending story that really stands out. We have a guy that was referred to Anchor for Recovery Support Services. Came in and he was going to school for air conditioning and refrigeration, and he said, I really want to see if I can get my internship also assigned here. So we worked it with his school, so he was interning, volunteering at Anchor, became a certified recovery coach. This guy is, you know, those 1 in a million, where as soon as you get to know him and the work that he does, he's a keeper. He's number one on our hit list. We will hire him the next Monday that becomes available. So all in all, I want to thank you, ROSC, and you know you've been like I said, that's the feel-good story right there. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Please visit us at anchorrecovery.org and like us on Facebook. Facebook, Anchor Recovery. Please like us. So that's all I have.
Jim, thank you so much. Wow, a wealth of information. And I know the two of you will be the go-to people for many of the other individuals in the cohort to talk to with regard to this. If you would like to submit a question, you're more than welcome to do that by clicking on your chat at the bottom right-hand corner, selecting Send to Amy Pinkney, and submitting your question. You may also try to, you can click on Raise Hand on the left-hand side of your box, right underneath the names. And I will also be able to see that, and I can click on that and unmute your phone. Linda, did you have any words that you wanted to?
No, but I did want to just thank everybody. I think both presentations were fabulous. I think RCO's recovery community organizations are vitally important, not only, to the ROSC program, but really to continue the great work that you all are doing and to really provide, I think, a place for people in recovery, both to get services, provide assistance to others, and really put a face on recovery. So I'm just delighted with the progress that both Jim and Katherine explained, the progress that they've made over the last few years, and I'm just very pleased. So I'm hoping that other people have questions or concerns or want to know more about a particular thing. So I don't know if there is anybody.
We haven't received any questions in writing.
Okay.
Are there any questions that someone would like to ask over the phone? You can click on Raise Your Hand, and I will be able to unmute you. We do have one question.
Okay.
And this question comes from Ms. Prather, and she would like to have someone elaborate about insurance and possibly how that this could be paid for under insurance.
Well, two ways that the interest that they expressed. One was in units for telephone recovery support, and the other one is actually with recovery coach contracts. One is, with a certain population that to reduce hospital visits. That's just one segment, and what is it going to take? So, and of course, they're looking to save money, but the two areas that they wanted the most information about is the TRS and just in-person recovery coaching.
We could get, if you're interested, I know there's a program in Texas.
Value option. Yeah.
Well, that gets money from Value Options for providing recovery support services, and they've been getting insurance payment for the last few years. If there's an interest, we can certainly try and get you more information.
Mm-hmm. And in New York, Linda, I think the Morris the Morris Project at Einstein, they have they're doing something where they're able to bill for recovery coaching.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I haven't heard that yet, but we'll check into that.
We actually have a question from Joanne Ford. Joanne, I've unmuted your line.
Hi, thanks. This question will make sense because I could not get my chat to work. So I was real curious, Jim, who runs the kids groups, and then also who do you have who kind of monitors your Facebook and your chat capabilities at your site?
Well, we have it's run by we have a group of interns, and they've also trained two of our recovery coaches, and we're very careful in the selection of that to run the kids groups. And it's a very simple, but we're very hands-on. What all of our volunteers go through is screening and an orientation at the Providence Center too. So we do we do PCIs and everything. So we're very hands-on with that. But it's our interns. It was their baby, and fortunately we seem to have, and we just got in a new group. We seem to be able to keep interns from different programs year round. So I keep my fingers crossed with that one. But we do have two recovery coaches, both who are always in on Saturdays, which is the biggest day for it. Our Facebook website is maintained by, there's two people that have administrative. One is a volunteer. He maintains the Anchor website, and he also maintains the Rally for Recovery website for us. And our volunteer coordinator is the other person. I mean, I have capability of it, but you don't want me. They don't want me on Facebook.
Right,
so they do
you.
constant updates on it.
Now, we had a question from Ms. Starkey, but before we do that, we did have another follow-up question to the insurance. And it was, Katherine, whether you all in Frederick County have used the value options, excuse me.
We have not. We presently, as I say, are part of the health department, and the health department has not contracted with any private insurances. So that is an ongoing issue, and there's reasons with the government for that. So we have not, but we would like to. That's why we need to become a 501c3 so we can pursue these other avenues.
Great, thank you. And Linda, we have a question from Ms. Starkey, and she would like to know if there's any SAMHSA funding on the horizon for the implementation of recovery community centers.
The only place there might be in the future some money is through, there may be money through the contract, the brass tacks contract to help support sort of state structure building to increase, and I can't say build necessarily every community organization, but to help build some infrastructure around that or support that kind of an activity. At this point, that's about it. There used to be the RCSP program, but there's no money this coming year for that. The 2014 budget, we don't have any information yet. There may be some types of funds for that, but honestly, there's been, I know of no decision that's total, there's nothing been done. So I just urge you to keep monitoring and checking the SAMHSA website. That's as much as I can tell you now. There just isn't anything. The states may be interested, and I would certainly begin to look at what the states are doing, because in many cases it's going to become an important and bigger issue for some of the states.
I think Massachusetts too, because of their statewide health care, they give a tremendous amount of money to each of their recovery community centers, which is a wonderful thing.
Vermont does that too. There are a number of states that do that, so that is, if you can build some support for that, that would be good.
Well, Linda, I don't see any more hands raised or questions sent via chat. So unless anybody else has a question.
If there are no more questions, well, I want to thank both of our speakers. Thank both Katherine and Jim. You did a great job. And people can also, contact you directly if they have more questions or information. And Kathy, I'll turn it back to you to go over any more housekeeping or let us know when the webinar would be, when the materials would be up and posted. So thank you all, and again, thanks to JBS for putting this together. Great job.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. And as I mentioned, we will be posting this to the Ideas Exchange once we get it from WebEx, hopefully in the next couple of days. We'll be able to download this, and we will need to go through a 508 compliance check, and then we can post it, so hopefully in the next week or so. If perhaps that you do not have the information on how to log in or have lost your login information, please do not hesitate to call me. I can give you a one-on-one. We will be doing a larger webinar on the Ideas Exchange in the future. Or if you don't have time and you'll be traveling on the road, you need this to send to you directly, I'd be happy to do that as well. So you can just send me an email. So I want to thank you all very much. And our upcoming webinars, we will be having some of our ROS grantees have received the Health Information Technology grants, and we will be having David Loveland, who you're all very familiar with. He will be presenting a webinar on what they are doing with regard to the Health Information Technology grants. We'll also be having two speakers talk on HIPAA compliance and using mobile technology and what programs need to consider when using text messaging to do outreach, recruitment, and retention. And then Dr. Christopher Branson will be talking to us about some mobile phone initiatives that they're using in their community for delivering evidence-based practices, for doing follow-up, and for doing outreach and retention with their clients. So we will be sending information on those webinars shortly. So thank you all again for joining, and have a wonderful afternoon.